crank the lights out, maybe? Is that a possibility or not? That would be really sweet. That's better.
It's better.
That's better. Okay, thank you very much. All right. Thank you everybody for coming. This was going to be sort of a quick intro in here, then go outside and look at moths. Well, that's not going to happen tonight, unfortunately. We're going to be doing the same thing tomorrow. So, and I'll have several sheets set up someplace around the lodge here. So if your activities allow it, please come by and you can see what's coming out and everything. If we can get a little bit better weather, the forecast looked slightly better, so we'll see what happens tomorrow. But tonight what I'm going to do is go over what I've learned in the past 6 or 8 years about identifying moths and some of the tricks of the trade. And also I'm going to show you a couple websites which can be very, very helpful. Luckily, with the advent of digital photography, field guides have really improved. The only moth field guide that used to be was an old Peterson one in black and white. It was, I wouldn't say it was useless, but it was very challenging to use. About 5, 6 years ago, Peterson came out with a new one that's in color, and it's very nice. It was done by 2 Canadians. Actually, they came through West Virginia, or she did. Seabrook Leckett came through West Virginia on a book tour. So I took a class with her down in Canadian. It was lots of fun. So this would be your first resource for identifying moths. The most challenging thing about moths is their immense diversity. And so it's intimidating because you see all these moths and your mind immediately sort of explodes a little bit. So what you have to do, just like starting from scratch with any taxa, you start from the general, you start working in. You start with the families, and I'm going to introduce you to the families that you probably are going to see. And then you start working on genuses and groups and then species and stuff. Just like birds, plants, anything else. You don't pick it up right away. It's a process and a learning curve. But it is doable. And every night, it's like a little treasure hunt. You never know what's going to show up on your porch. So it's lots of fun. I think every picture but one I've taken here, most of them were taken, you'll see this orangish background. That's my house. Because it has like a cedar stain on the hardy plank stuff. So that's what you're going to be seeing. Okay. All righty. Butterflies and moths, Lepidoptera. Phylum they're insects. Lepidoptera means scaly wings because of the scales, of course, that are covering their wings and giving those wonderful patterns and colors. There's something like 255,000 species worldwide. Like a lot of insects, most are in the tropics. For Lepidopteran evolution is based on, or is tied to other taxa and how they evolve. They evolve with other co-evolve with other taxa. Moths evolved from a group of insects called a Canarchoid complex that included some of the oddball sort of taxa, except for has true flies, alder flies, dobson flies, caddis flies, scorpion flies, and lacewings. Except for the true flies are sort of the spice in the whole soup of insects, and these little strange families that you find at the beginning of the insect books. Earliest known moth fossil is about 190 million years ago. And it's thought that the moths the early moths evolved quite early. The larger moths, called the macro moths, may have co-evolved with bats, which was their major predator. The early butterflies, which are just actually glorified moths, if you look at the phylogenetic grouping of Lepidoptera, you have what are called the micro moths, which are the more primitive moths up there, butterflies, and then the macro moths. So butterflies are just basically day-flying moths, in essence. But we treat them special because they're out when we are, so it's fun. But early butterflies are thought to have risen about 130 million years ago from a common moth ancestor. There's very few Lepidopteran fossils. A lot of them were caught in amber, like Jurassic Park kind of stuff. Because these species are soft-bodied and they were mostly in upland dry habitats, it was a rare occurrence for them to actually fossilize because they weren't aquatic or anything. And so there are a few of them, but not too many. This is one of the few. This is from out in Colorado. This is a skipper. which is a type of butterfly from about 34 million years ago. So many of the night-flying macro moths, like the big noctuas and such, and the silk moths, the giant silk moths, arose during the early tertiary, about 50 million years ago, with the bats. And so even today, it's a constant back and forth with bats and moths and trying to outsmart each other so the moths don't get eaten and the bats won't eat the moths. Butterflies are closely associated with flowering plants, nectaring and such. And researchers believe that butterflies and flowering plants also co-evolved during the Cretaceous, during that explosive radiation of angiosperms at that time. So this is a possible phylogenetic tree. Pretty much most of these are extinct. There's a couple in here, but all the lepidopterans occur in these four groupings right down in here. So they fall within this large grouping called the Tricea. And that's just for like museum people and that sort of stuff. So on here are the little dots, or the known lepidopteran fossils. So you can see how scarce they are. I mean, there's 100 times more dinosaurs than that, for example. So they're pretty rare. Okay. So in West Virginia, we don't know exactly how many moths we have. We're guessing, based on what other states have guessed about their moth communities, that we probably have about 2,000 species. We know of about 400 or so, give or take, species. Yeah, about 400 species or so in West Virginia. But other states like Kentucky and Ohio and a few other neighboring states, they estimate, oh, we probably have about 2,000. So we'll go with their number. They are still it's an active research to actually describe moths. The moths being described, new moths being described in North America every year. It's a very active area of research. As I said before, moths are divided into two major groups. Micromoths are typically small, not always, but typically quite small, 6 to 20 millimeters or so in length. They're earlier involved, and there are probably about 940 species or so in West Virginia. Macromoths are usually larger, more recently evolved, and we have a little bit more, something over 1,000 species we estimate. We estimate that about 25% nationally are undescribed. That could be a lot larger. That's just a guess. We just finished up the field work for the West Virginia Butterfly Atlas. We also surveyed for some moths. We were going to do all moths until I discovered I'm only one person, and trying to do work both all day and all night can be really tough. So we decided just to do a few of the more charismatic moths, the giant silkworm moths, the Saturnity, the Sphinx or hawk moths, some of which are day flyers, and some rare species that we're trying to get some data on. So, identification. Moths are nice. With butterflies, you have to look at both the upper side and the underside of the wings for a lot of species. Not all of them, but enough of them that you got to do both. With moths, typically you just have to look at the dorsal surface. So you can stick a light out at night, let the moth come in and light, take a picture of it. Often you can identify it, and that's what a lot of people do. And the digital photography, as I was talking about, it's become a really fun hobby for people to do. We have moth nights, we have National Moth Week coming up in July, so a lot of folks do it. So with good digital photographs, you can ID most species, but it has to be in focus and of good resolution. This is not a good photo. Very bad. For critical work, like for describing new species, researchers base positive IDs on male genitalia. So you can see these two species, these are from China. They look pretty similar, but their genitalia are quite different. And so they're able to differentiate the species with that. And that's one of the critical things. So some identification tips. As I'm talking about, the diversity can seem overwhelming. It takes time, exposure, practice. You just got to sort of chip away at it. And again, I didn't go out and stick 20 lights out in the forest with sheets and try to start identifying that way. I flipped on my porch light. Single source, very local. And over the course of the growing season, from say April, May-ish, through into October, November, you get a whole, differing suites of species. Because just like butterflies, you have spring flying species, you have summer flying species, and you have fall flying species. So you get different ones through the years, which is kind of nice. It's fun to start with a larger common species, but I won't guarantee that that's what's going to come into your porch like. You may get little tiny ones. What I do, I get a new field guide. I read it, I browse through it to familiarize myself with that picture, for example. I'm very image driven. So you do that and you see something, say, I saw that. And it's really frustrating because then you have to flip through the book to find it. But you become familiar, and over time you gradually get used to seeing something and be able to lock that up with an image that you saw in the book and find it. So you browse through the field guide and also some really cooler websites, which I will show you. Okay. But you have to make sure first it's a moth. So look at these for a little bit, and then we're going to see who can figure out what's a moth and what is not a moth. I haven't defined a moth yet, so we'll see what you're like right now. Okay.
Can you say again the distinction between a butterfly and a moth?
I didn't go through it yet. Okay. I should have gone through, actually. I should have done it the first slide. My apologies. Okay. This is a butterfly, this is a moth. Butterflies have clubs on their antennas. Moths' antennas, and this one is just like a little filiform, like a thread. They can be very feathery, like a feather, or they can be spindle-shaped, where it's narrow on the bottom and just gradually widen towards the top. A lot of the sphinx moths have that type of antenna. Butterflies are usually day-flying, the diurnal, most moths nocturnal. Butterflies can be more delicate, though a lot of moths are pretty delicate too, but they usually have brighter coloration because they're day flying, and so they use that coloration as part of their courtship and territoriality and such. Moths often, they are very cryptically covered because during the day they have to hide from birds, and so they want to look like the background so they don't get eaten. Not every, some moths are very brightly colored. I'll show you some very brightly colored moths. Those are often moths that are associated with flowers. They hide in the blooms, and so they disappear into those bright colors. So this is your butterfly. That's a moth. Okay, let's go to that other slide. Okay, so is this a moth?
No.
Is this a moth? Is this a moth? Is this a moth?
Yes.
Okay. This is the moth's closest relative. This is a caddisfly. The other ones, you're right, very good. This one's a little tough. We'll see, tomorrow we'll see a lot of caddisflies. And they can be fussy, difficult because their wings can look a little bit scaly, but you see they have mouth parts, they have jaws. Well, all moths, if they have mouth parts, some of them don't feed as adults. They have that called proboscis, like a butterfly. Okay, so, like all Peterson books, they have, you have the bird topography page and the bird guides. You have a moth topography page in moth guides. So you're looking at wingspan. This is the costal margin, or costa. Often they have these little spots. This is a discal spot, because this is the discal cell in the wing. Hind wing, forewing, inner margin, that's the edge of the forewing, outer margin, apex, this little guy here, anal angle. And again, just like bird topography, this is stuff you get used to. Just like, eye stripe and malar stripe and bib and all that sort of stuff. Moths also have a plethora of markings, just like birds do. I'm not going to go through this. This is something you just sort of refer to in the book, for example. Not all moths have all markings. Some moths are practically unmarked. Some moths have all sorts of markings. Depends upon the species. There are lines here. Can be important. These little lines going across. You have spots, like reniform spots, and let's see, subreniform spot, orbicular spot. Orbicular and reniform are the two main ones. And the antenna size and shape. So here's this pectinate or feather-like antenna, or bipectinate. The pectinate, where it's feathery on one side, and filiform, which is just like a thread. Okay. So you have the markings, is one part of the identification. Then you get into size. And this is my house. So you have a little guy called a white spotted pug, which has about 21 millimeters is their wingspan. Small and Grail is about 30 millimeters, and Tulip Tree Beauty is about 50 millimeters. They're all gray and white. They're all actually in the same family. They're in what are called the geometer family, or geometridae. But they're 3 different species, and they're all very common. You get all of these, depending upon the time of year. So size, just like anything else, size is an issue, and you have to look at that. And you're not out there with a ruler measuring the wingspan, but you just get used to looking and seeing if something's small versus something being large. Then you look at shape, and like most Peterson Field guides, they have a silhouette page. And you'll see this up here too. Just like, the birds on the wire in the bird guide, so you have all silhouettes. And it can be very helpful, because some moths are very distinctive just based on their silhouette. Like, for example, this one, hook tips. Their wings have a hook on them. There's no other moths around here that has something like that. Snouts always have this deltoid shape. And see this little extension here? Those are called labial palps. And some of them are very small. You can't really see them in a lot of families or groups. Some of them, they're very long and apparent. This is one of the micro moths, a leaf roller, and they're sort of rectangular but flat. Loopers often they're sort of angular, and they have these really funky little tufts of hair on their thorax. Plume moths have these little skinny wings that stick out at right angles. And sphinx moths, or hawk moths, have these long, fairly thin forewings and small hind wings. And those are sort of some basic shapes. And there's the silhouette page we're talking about. Things like silk moths, it's going to be hard to mistake that for anything else, especially if it's a lunar moth with those really long tails, for example. There's a sphinx moth, so the long, narrow wings drooping down, kind of. And let's see, geometer. Dagger moths have this sort of thinner delta shape. So, prominents have their abdomen sticking out at the end. They look a little tail. Okay. The one thing we like to see, because we're humans, we can see color, is color and pattern. We tend to concentrate on that the most, because that's how we recognize each other's faces and everything. It's color and pattern. So moths have a lot of browns and blacks and whites, because a lot of them aren't colored brightly, because again they have to camouflage. But some of them do have some interesting colors and patterns. This is one of the brocades. This is up in the mountains of Pocahontas County. Gorgeous little thing, really intricate. Moths often have really intricate, subtle patterns in their scales, which makes it very interesting. And some of them are very variable, but some of them you know exactly what it is just because it has something. Like this is one of the slug moths, and it has this frostiness on the costa, this little white spot, and this little loopy thing here. And I know exactly what I know that's a slug moth. This is a grass veneer. If you walk across your lawn and little moths pop up, that's these guys. They're called grass veneers. They're often amber and white, but they have a little silvery color on the end of their wings. This is the dagger, which are common forest moths. And you think that's just a gray moth, but you can see very subtly, these are the spots, and then it has little dagger marks, these little dark slashes here and there. And that's very diagnostic for that species. So it's very subtle. Emeralds are green. It's really cool. And underwings, they're brown, they're very camouflaged on their forewings, but their hind wings are very brightly colored. Okay, condition. You have an old, beat-up, worn moth, forget it. You're not going to be able to identify it unless you can take it apart and look at its genitalia. That's the only way you're going to identify it, if it's a male. Like this one, I think it's a noctuid, but now I'm noticing the little tail, so it could be a prominent, which is another family. But here, you can't distinguish any pattern or really any color because all the scales are wrong. But if you get one that's really fresh, like this common tan wave, it's really nice. Because it's nice and bright, you can see all the detail and all the little structures and everything, and lines, the spots and patterns. So that's very nice. So that's why everybody, if you go into these websites, all the moths look really fresh, and that's why, because they're much easier to identify when they're really fresh. So that's why if you go into your garage and start getting moths that are stuck to, spider webs up on the windows, it's not going to work. So we have some commonly encountered families. Remember, there are about 60 families that occur in West Virginia. So we're just going to look at a small subset of those. And these are the names, and these are on the handout I gave you. So you don't have to write all these things down. And everything I'm going to go over now is sort of summarized on your handout, so you can make notes easily. Okay. The Elachicidae, or grass miners. So these are some of the ones that are also down near your lawn that you pick up when you walk through your lawn or other grassy areas. So they're small, only about 8 to 10 millimeters. They're just little guys. They have pointed palps. Can everybody see this picture right here? The palps start from underneath and then they loop up over their head. They're little pointy things. Little curved, pointed structures that go over their head. So that's pretty diagnostic for this family. They have white dots, see here, there, here, and dark lines as markings. And often they have these little curved markings like on the side, right here, there. So those are the grass miners. And these are not, I said start with the big fancy ones, but these guys show up. You're going to see these. Those are common. Tortricids are more than just these leaf rollers, but the other tortricids are real rare to identify, even if you get good photographs. But these guys usually show up. You usually get some of these, so I'm going to go over these. There's 3 groups of leaf rollers, tortricid leaf rollers. You have the Archips, there's this guy, that made the little pointy snout. Then they have these sort of subtle bands. They're not really hugely contrasting, going across their body, usually in a V shape. Little dots over here. And usually the thorax is darker. The Sparganthids have really long palps. See how they stick out? And usually they have spots, but also sometimes they're beautifully, it's called reticulated. So it's like a net-like pattern over the whole surface of the wings. And the Tortrixes have these markings coming from the side of the cossus. They're like little triangles on the side of each wing, like that. All of them look flattened. Don't have a lot of three-dimensionality to them. They're sort of flattened, sort of a squared off, sharp edge to the wings, and medium to long palps. These guys especially have long palps. Then you have the grass fingers, which you mentioned earlier. Small, again, these are still micromoths, 10 to 20 millimeters. They almost look cylindrical. See how the wings are sort of rolled up like this? So unlike these guys, which are sort of flattened, these guys are highly three-dimensional. They're round kind of. And again, they have these long, straight palps. See how the palps stick out, especially on this one. It's really good. There, there. They have often silvery edges to the wings. And we have probably about, of the brownish ones, we probably have about 6 or 8 common species. And it is tough to get photographs for this. I mean, it's good to have like a micro lens, for example. You can get it using a phone, but you have to have a good steady hand for it, certainly, and have good lighting. And same family, the Crambides. These are ones, instead of rolled, they're sort of have the wings spread out or have a deltoid shape. These are the pyrostids. 2 general shapes, sort of flattened and deltoid shape. About 6 to 18 millimeters total length, so a little bit larger than the grass fingers. Earth-toned to very bright colors, like this mint-loving pyrostid. See, it's yellow and maroon, yellow and purplish almost. Most of the deltoid-shaped ones, palps aren't long, but they're more noticeable than these guys, for example. So they stick out a little bit. The pale colors, like this carrot seed moth and some of the other delta-shaped ones, the paler colors look sort of satiny or creamy. They have like a luster to them. It's very quite beautiful. Okay, then we get, these are getting into the macro moths. So these are the geometridae. These are the ones, these are some of the most common ones you're going to see. Most of the geometrids perch with their wings outstretched. So you see both the forewing and the hind wing, and often the pattern goes from the forewing onto the hind wing in one unified pattern. Like on this cherry scallop shell, you can see that, and on this bent line carpet. Some of them don't, like their hydromenia, often it's like a deltoid shape, so there's always an exception to the rule, of course. So for the pugs and carpets, these are the carpet moths, these are the ones that get into your sweaters or whatever and everything. But a lot of our native ones, they don't go in your house or anything like that, they just stay outside. They can be quite large, up to 40 millimeters wingspan. Wings are usually spread. They often have discal spots. Remember we were talking about that before? Like right here on this pug, this little spot there and from there. On the carpet here, those are discal spots. Often those are diagnostic. And the teeth in the lines can be significant. Like on this variable carpet, see this line comes across here, and then you have this big tooth going down. That you pay attention to, because that can be diagnostic. So identifying moths is an exercise in not getting overwhelmed and in noticing details. That sort of sums it up to a large extent. These are what are called typical geometers. They belong to a whole series of genuses and everything, and subfamilies and tribes. And these are the ones that are common ones you'll see. You leave your door open at night, and these are the ones that are going to be coming in and flying around your house, and cats are going to be trying to get. Lots of different colors, lots of different shapes. Like the Plagotis have this funky edge to their forewing. Crocus geometers have, they're yellow and purple. They're really cool. Some of them are quite, ethereal. So like this pale beauty. It's quite beautiful. So they can be sort of medium to quite large. They often are really fluttery and sort of flimsy winged. They're not strong flyers at all. Wings are usually open, various colors from white to black, colors. Bands and discal spots are often diagnostic, like the line here on this pale beauty, or on this curved tooth geometer that does this little funky swoops down and then has a point and then it comes back across here. They can be variable and difficult to ID. The oak beauties have several different forms. For example, they can go from pale gray to this dark brown. So, but you sort of ignore the base color and look at the pattern of the markings. Then you have the really charismatic ones, the giant silk moths, the Polyphemus and Luna moths and such. There are three main groups: giant, royal, and buck moths. The Isle moth is, we only have two species of buck moths. Isle moth is one of them. The giants are these guys, like the oakworm moths, and then the royal include the Polyphemus moth. Medium to very large, of course. Really fuzzy bodies. And these are ones, these guys do not feed as adults. They gorge as caterpillars, and then when they become adults, they have a fat reserve that they use to race against time to mate and have young and everything, and then they die. They fly around, mate, lay eggs, and then they're going to die because they are unable to feed. They have no mouth parts as adults. So these are fairly short. They're only good for a week or so. They often have large eye spots. So you can see the eye spots there, eye spots there, eye spots there. And eye spots are thought to act as behaviorally. If a bird comes after them, they'll open their wings really suddenly, and the bird will see a face. And they may back off because is that prey or is that something trying to eat me? And so it often gives them more time to drop to the ground or something to escape the predator. So the eye spots are used defensively against predators. The wings are typically open, or often they're in a deltoid shape like this. And sometimes there is, often with these guys, there's also sexual dimorphism. For example, the eye moth, this is a male. The female is quite dark. The wings will be differently colored. Polyphemus, not so much. There is some differences. Moon moth, not so much. But this, see, this is a male pink striped ochre moth, and this is the female. So there's quite a large size difference and some differences in the patterns and such on the wings. And then we have the sphinx moths, which are really cool too, because you have some day flyers. They can be really flagrantly colorful, like the small-eyed sphinx down here that's amber and purple and brown and red and all sorts of colors, to very cryptic as well, like the wave sphinx. And that you just identify based on the pattern of the lines and spots. Pandora's sphinxes are green. Virginia creeper sphinxes have some green on them. And this is the hummingbird clearwing, which is very common in home gardens and such. It'll come to, this is a sweet pea, looks like. And these are day-flying moths, and they mimic bees. They look sort of bee-like. We have a couple species that occur in the state. And the wings are clear. The scales are just on the tips and on the veins. And he's got, and you can see this other shape of the antenna, which is called spindle shape, so it's narrow at the base, and it's a little bit wider at the tip. But there's no ball on the end of it. It's just a very gradual widening. So they can be quite large, up to 70 millimeters in length. They have a very stout body. See how large the body is compared to the size of the wings? The hind wing is long and narrow, or the forewing is long and narrow. The hind wing is much smaller. You can see the hind wing is right here on this hummingbird clear wing, while this is the forewing here. So the hind wing is quite a bit smaller than these guys. And then they have various markings, eye spots, bands, and they can be a whole series of colors. And then we have the erebid moths. The taxonomists had a field day with this back in 2010. They decided, well, we're going to combine all these families from the noctuids, which is a huge group of moths, and add in some other families, and they're all going to smush them together because they're closely related taxonomically. So we got a sort of a mishmash of species in this grouping now. It is what it is. You go with it. So the old Peterson guide has the old families and genuses. You won't see this term in it, but in the new one, it's in here, and that's how it's, well, as far as I know, that's how it's going to stay. So it's just something that you get used to. Very diverse group of shapes, markings, and colors. Includes very common and numerous ones like litter moths and snout moths, which you kick up like on forest trails and such. Underwing zales, and other related taxa. It can be very small to extremely large, depending upon what you see. So you have tussock moths, which is our main enemy. Gypsy moths is a tussock moth. Of course, that's an invasive exotic species from Asia. But we have native tussock moths as well. Usually they're broadly deltoid in shape. They got hairy legs, fairly stout bodies. A lot of them have this little white spot near the anal angle, which is that area right in here on the forewing. The streaked tussock moth doesn't happen to have that marking, but a lot of them do. Usually browns and paler markings with various spots and bands.
Sue,
Yes?
a woolly bear is tussock? Woolly bear caterpillars.
No, they're not tussock moths. I will show you which one they are. It's in here.
Good.
Okay. They're related though.
How much do you-
Yes. Then you have the lichen and tiger moths, which the woolly bear, this is the woolly bear, adult moth. Isabella tiger moth is the adult form of the woolly bear. So it is a tiger moth.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Small to medium size, often colorful and brightly patterned like this clymene moth. And the lichen moth is this is a beautiful little bug right here, I think. Tiger moth markings can be quite variable within the species. And in this, the abdomen, you can see on the Isabella tiger moth, you can have markings on the abdomen which can be fairly distinctive. And on some of these, there's several that are pure white, but if you look underneath them, the legs may be pink, the hair on the legs may be pink, it may be yellow, it may be orange, and often that's diagnostic. So it can get really frustrating, but it's fun. They perch with wings closed, but the hind wing is often brightly colored. So sometimes you want to poke them to see if they'll move the wings. Then you have the snout moths. They're called snout moths for obvious reasons. They got a nose. Those palps stick out. They're all pretty much broadly deltoid in shape. They have large patches of contrasting color. You can see in these two species. Usually shades of brown, gray, tan, and black. And this you can see some of the color differences. These are the same species right here. These first two ones, called the green cloverworm moth. What you look for on this, it's broadly deltoid with their snouts, so you know it's a snout moth. And see this little line right here, right there, and right there. That's the diagnostic marking for this species. So that's an example of some of the, not all the moths are like this, but this one certainly is. And that's some of the variety that you'll get within a species. Then you have the litter moths, which are different from the snout moths. They're broadly deltoid, a little more broadly deltoid. They're sort of almost like an equilateral triangle instead of an isosceles triangle. Sort of medium size, browns, tans, and blacks. These guys hang out on the forest floor literally. And their larvae of these guys, and also these guys, are detritivores. They eat like dead leaves and stuff like that. They can be sexually dimorphic. The males will have little tufts of hair on their antenna, sometimes on their legs, and sometimes the wings will be different. Like this is a male ambiguous moth, and this is a female ambiguous moth. You see, he has these really funky palps. Some of the palps on these guys are really cool. And he has this wing, it's a little bit hard to see, but it actually has a divot right here. The wing goes in like that, and then comes back out like that, and goes up. So he has a different color and pattern, but also different wing shape, actually. The dark spotted palphus sort of takes the honors for funky palps. See how long that is? So it's pretty cool. The shape of the spots and some of the lines are diagnostic. Okay. Then the underwings and zales. And the underwings are sort of a really sexy group. A lot of people love to go, and they're out in late summer and early fall, so people go out and look for these guys then. And they think they're really cool because they're hard to spot, but if you get them to open their wings, it's really pretty. So looking at these, the hind wing is often brightly colored, or it can be just black, but has a bright white margin to it sometimes. And something called a subterminal line, often with two long jagged extensions. And that's this thing. See, this thing comes down, and then these two jagged teeth right there, and right there, and right there. So the underwings often have that. So sometimes it's easy to identify that genus just based on that and sort of the shape. The zales have this really intricate sort of patterning. You know, they see that on a tree trunk, you'll never spot it. Almost every zale you see will be the lunate zale. So it's a game to try and figure out, is that a lunate? And it's highly variable. This can have big patches of white on it, for example. So the trick is to try and figure out if it's different enough to be a different species or just a variable lunate zale. But most of the zales are this kind. So these guys are deltoid if they're just sitting. These guys tend to be more spread out like a geometry moth. Then you get the noctuids, which is a huge family. Largest family of moths, about 35,000 known species worldwide. I don't know how many in West Virginia, but probably several hundred at least. Size is small to medium. It tends to be fairly robust looking. Generally earth tone, but often with intricate and subtle patterns. Usually only the forewings are visible. The hind wings are usually unremarkable. There's really nothing, lines or patterns to them or anything. Some of the spots are diagnostic, and some species can be quite variable. But here you got this is the pink shaded fern moth, which is really cool. I mean, it has pink on it. I've never heard of a pink moth. And this is gray-hooded owlet and has this funky little hairdo going on. So these are just some examples. I'm not going to go through groupings per se. I put some groupings on your handout just to get you familiar with them. You have borers. Often they're this orange with bright white spots on them. The daggers all tend to be quite subtle. And they call daggers because they have these little, see these dark markings here? There, there. And sometimes they come in along the side, sometimes they come across there. So they look like dagger. I mean, they're like a knife slash, for example. So they're called daggers, I guess, because of that. So these little dark lines. Darts often have their spots. There's an orbicular and uniform spot contained within a black field. That's a dart. Not always, but often. Glyphs are often they can be greens with whites and everything. And they're sort of a deltoid shape with really intricate markings. Leuconictia are greens, blotches. Here's the loopers, the tufted hairs. And one common one you see a whole lot is this bristly cottonwood moth. It has these green spots on it. And a few more. Sallows you see late in the summer. Brocades are pretty much all year. Spits. Brocades are some of the most beautiful moths. They can be very intricate, often with some brighter colors and really contrasting patterns. And then, of course, are the caterpillars, if you really want to get into it. Oh, yeah, here it is. They have a whole book of it. You really want to get into it. Caterpillars can be really tough because caterpillars go through instars, and instars can change appearance as they get older. First instar will look very different from a fifth instar. And technically to identify them, you have to count the little hairs and bristles. I don't do that. I just take pictures and try to match up pictures. I don't go that far. But here you can see some, and you've probably seen a lot of these guys. Spotted apatales, which is really cool. There's an eastern buck moth, which we get actually, the only time I found buck moths was down in the southern part of the state, so you see nice if you like them. The larvae out during the summer, the adult doesn't come out until the fall. And this is one of the prominents, and often these guys are really camouflaged. You can see here's the leaf and the stem, and he's mimicking a necrotic sort of leaf and eating it at the same time, which is really cool. It was in my backyard. I was so proud of that one. So caterpillars can be a lot of fun, but they're more challenging than the adults, I think. And that's all I have. And there's a nice royal regal moth, one of the silk moths. A friend took that one at a gas station, which is really cool. That's a really cool. So anyways, I have some moths up here. I got the books. I have these for you to borrow tonight during the class, which I should have handed them out earlier and I forgot. But you can take them and sort of look through them and get familiar with some of them. Ohio has a really nice I&E program where they make these wonderful little booklets. People taking the pollinator class will get a butterfly book tomorrow. So you can come up and use them while you're in this room here. I only have 20 of them. And if you have this tomorrow night, I don't have enough for everybody, so we're just going to share. I have some moths that I've collected over the years up here, and some of the books you can look at. Oh, and I was going to show you the websites. That's right. I'll do that first. Oh, come on. This worked before. Oh, I know, because I rebooted it so I could get the video. All right, now we can do it. So with digital photography, people have done websites, which is wonderful. And the first one you go to is called the Moth Photographers Group, based out of, I think, Mississippi State. And see up here, we have moth taxonomy, plate series. But then they have this thing.
I'm not seeing that.
bird's nest.
Ow! Oh, I know. Yes, there we go. Okay. Thank you. We used to have a walk through the moth families. Let's get off. Oh, those pretty dogs. Sorry about that. Well, I'll show you what to do. Okay. So you go in something called Plate Series. Oh, here it is. Try walking through the moth families. Okay. So click on Plate Series. And you can click, and there's all this cool stuff to explore up here. This is a really cool website. Try walking through the moth families. And this sort of goes through and shows you what's going on. And see these numbers here? Those are called Hodges numbers. There's a guy called Hodges that numbered all the moth species. And that'll be, you also see them in the book here. So you go through here and you think you found it, then you can go here and match up the number. And then there's a further way you can go too. So you can look at moth families and start getting familiar again from the general to the specific, start getting familiar with the families. Once you do that, you go to the Plate Series, you go down here, and see these are all the families. So these are all the micro moths up here, and then the geometrids start with the macro moths. So let's go into something fairly easy, like Saturnid. I usually, and these are different speeds of downloads. I usually go with a slow medium. I could do it fast at work, but at home, forget it. I'm on Frontier with no limits. So you go into there, and then you see you can view by region, because this is nationally. There's no need for you to look at laws in the Pacific Northwest unless you're out there, for example. So you select region, you do East Central, so the far right-hand upper corner, and then you get sort of the East Central, which is us, sort of the Mid-Atlantic. Oops. There we go. So these are the Saturnids. So these are the various Saturnid moths that we can get. There are quite a few of them. This one's quite common, the rosy maple moth, which is a small one, but it's quite beautiful. And this was the pink striped oakworm moth that I had the photograph of. This is our buck moth that we only get in the fall, for example. And there's our Polyphemus. So I say, well, I think it might be a Polyphemus. So click on the number, and you get a map. You see it's quite broadly distributed. A beautiful picture, and then a few other pictures. But they're all really nice. But then you also get caterpillars, which is great, and the chrysalis and the pupa. But see here, species at bugguide.net. Bugguide.net is a great website. You can identify almost any invertebrate in the United States. It's super. So you go to this one, and here's Bug Guide. If you want to look at other taxa, there's a little pictorial guide over here. You just click on one of those images and we'll put you in there. There's no way to sort this by region though. So you're looking, so usually I go into think I know the species and I click on this and I can get a lot more information. And the really valuable thing about this, it goes into classification, synonyms, and size, and a few other things down here, which is quite interesting to read often. But the great thing is images. They have lots and lots and lots of images. Because you get a moth, it may not be perfect. It may be variable. Because the images on the moth photographers group may have been taken in a different part of the country. There may be some geographic variation. This one, often you can match up exactly, even though you get something that's fairly variable. And you can see, it shows images of caterpillars, adults, or both. So you're just looking for caterpillars, they'll just show you caterpillars, which can be very helpful. So you don't have to paw through all the adult pictures. Or you can just look at adults. So these are all pictures of adults. And see, you're going to get front, you're going to get rear angle, So it can be very helpful. And you see there's at least 9 pages, there are more than 9 pages of photographs on this, as opposed to the Moth Photographers group that just has that one section. So this is, I find, really helpful because these guys are so variable, especially when you get into some of the noctuids and the geometrids, that you need to, because I'm not looking at it critically the way a taxonomist would, for example. So it's really helpful to have that variety in order to try and match things up. So those 2 websites, Moth Photographers Group and bugguide.net, are really, really valuable things. And there's some other ones, like the Naturalist stuff is really good. I haven't used it, but I've heard that it can be quite useful, and a few other ones. These are just the 2 that I happen to use. There are other resources out there. Again, with the advent of digital photography, this stuff has just exploded for a lot of different taxa. So it's lots of fun. Okay, well, I'll leave these up. Let me go back. And any species you go into on Moth Photographers Group, it will have the link to bugguide.net. So it's very, very handy. And it goes to that exact species. You don't have to crawl through anything. So that's quite nice as well. So that's how I have developed my, I wouldn't say expertise, but my skills. I had to go out and do bat surveys at night, driving surveys that the DNR does. And I get home, I'm too wired to go to sleep, and so I go outside and take pictures of moths. And that's how this all starts, because of bats. So, go figure. So anyways, that's what I had. Come up and take a look at these. Again, you can use them in here, but I need them for tomorrow. Sorry I didn't get them out sooner. And come up and take a look at some of the resources I have up here. And I'm here for questions. Unfortunately, we'll try to put up some sheets tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.